We're looking at the last weekend of summer behind us. This summer, did you go on a family car trip? When someone inevitably asks, how long till we get there? How long? Well, if you've ever asked, how long do I cook it? You're asking the same question, because how long you drive or how long you cook has other variables involved in it. But when you know how to read the road signs and the signs in cooking, you'll always know precisely when you've arrived at your destination. We'll talk about how to read the road signs of cooking today on the Carefree Cook's Code. I'm Chef Todd Moore, and this is the Carefree Cook's Code, every Tuesday live at noon Eastern. Here's our challenge. How can home cooks cook freely with creativity, confidence, and pride while ignoring recipes and still impressing themselves and others with what they cook? Well, the answer is found in becoming empowered with how cooking works, using dependable and repeatable methods of cooking that work for any ingredient, for any diet, and any desire, just like chefs do. And we'll know we've cracked it when everyone sees cooking as an exciting and rewarding way to improve their relationships, their lifestyles, and their health through better food and cooking. This is the Carefree Cook's Code. Hey everybody! Good to see you again. Love my Tuesdays. Welcome back to the Carefree Cook's Code. This is the weekly show for the methods, the techniques, the insights into better food and cooking. And of course, we're live every Tuesday at noon Eastern. If you're looking for any past video, go on the archive at facebook.com/chef.todd.moore/videos. There's our schedule. We're together Tuesdays at noon. We don't cook today, but the concepts, I just said that. On Thursdays at 6 p.m., casual cooking. Not too many more in the backyard, I fear, but I have a great new thing coming for you in October that I think everybody is going to love. We're going to add this to the schedule, and you're just going to freak when I tell you about it. Nonetheless, because who are we? Well, we're Carefree Cooks. We create our own recipes. We bring friends and family together. We learn every time we cook, creating our own cooking style. And this is all accomplished by using pro methods, and you wind up loving your cooking. That's the idea. But you know, as an educator, as a teacher, as a professor, as a long list of things, you know, I found that everybody wants a simple answer. They want to know exactly. Just give me the formula. Let me swallow the pill. Tell me what it takes. Let me know that it takes exactly 7 minutes and 32 seconds to saute a chicken breast. They want to know that it's going to take exactly 22 minutes for them to drive to the grocery store. They might encounter traffic or something. What if something happens along the way? What if a variable is thrown at you, like a thicker chicken breast than normal, or a construction zone, or a detour? That's why your destination can never be measured in time. Driving or cooking, you can never say how long. You can say how far, sure, but really to know when you've arrived, you got to be able to recognize the street signs, the signs in cooking, and that's what we're going to talk about. But today, I've got a what am I for you today. Oh my, that looks like a lot of hard math or something. But anybody who's taken my 5 skills taught in culinary school that are essential in all cooking, anyone who's taken that class knows exactly what those group of numbers are. Please show me how smart you are, and you know what I'm going to talk about today in the comments section below. What am I? What are those numbers? What do they represent? Okay, so here's the big question for you today. Do you always know where you're going? Okay, think about that. For just a minute. Do you always know where you're going? When you set out, are you always sure of the destination? And I mean this in both ways. Literally, when you leave your house, you start walking or driving somewhere, do you always know exactly where you're going to wind up? And figuratively, is there a goal in sight for you? Is there somewhere philosophically that you're headed to? No matter where you're literally headed to? And I mean, sometimes we lose our way, right? Sometimes we forget where we're headed in the middle of the journey. Do you ever start driving one place and wind up going another? And this is why I always refer to the progression of your cooking skills as a journey, because it always continues. You're always on your way to somewhere, but it can be really confusing unless you've been there before. Okay? If you've reached your destination previously, if you've been successful previously, then it's even easier to find it a second time and a third time, because now you know the road markers. Now you can see that you're on the right path, and you need to know where you're going. If you've done it before, it's a heck of a lot easier. And these are road markers in cooking as well. They can help speed your journey. Because if you see these road markers in cooking again and again, you can recognize them no matter where you're headed. But most home cooks, they ignore this. They ignore the road markers in cooking because they are so focused on time, how long to cook something, and at what temperature to cook it. And cooking by time and oven temperature is absolutely the worst way to cook. It's like driving while looking at your watch and the GPS on your phone. At the same time, you're probably going to hit a brick wall, right? How will you ever see the road markers along the way if you're staring at your watch and your phone? How will you know when you've arrived? So my question today is, can you recognize the road markers in cooking? These are the ones that recipe followers and TV show watchers are never told about. They're just told to follow the steps. But they're the ones that I'm going to tell you about today because it opens up a world of cooking for people. And it's one of the first things I teach in culinary school because it enables you to read the signs. But let me illustrate a point first. To tell a story to illustrate my point, you know I love a good story, and you might have heard me talk about Hawaii. Heather and I love Hawaii. We honeymooned in Hawaii 20 plus years ago. We immediately fell in love with it. And one of the great things about Hawaii is that it's a lot of wilderness. There aren't a lot of handrails. There aren't a lot of signs or guides. There's not a lot of park rangers to guide you and point you in the way. I mean, the place is not a Disney amusement park. It's a beautiful, natural, and dangerous place. And Heather and I love to explore. We love to find hidden waterfalls. We love to find hiking spots that few people know about. And that's especially true in Hawaii. We love to snorkel because in Hawaii, you just keep your snorkel gear in the trunk of the car. You can always pull off on a roadside turn and you're going to hit water eventually in Hawaii. Any road in Hawaii either goes up the mountain or down to the shore or around and around. I mean, they're islands, for goodness sake, right? We like to find these hidden snorkel spots that most tourists don't know about, and hopefully, if you can get in the water, if it's not too violent. And I mean, some of these spots that we found are just crazy. They're way off the beaten path. Nobody knows about them but the locals, and they have waves that smash against the jagged black lava rock spray 20 feet in the air. There's one of them that's called the washing machine. Because if you get caught in it, it swirls you around, it scrapes you against the lava, and then it spits you back out to sea. Maybe alive. That is not a nice, tranquil place for snorkeling. But if you do find a nice, tranquil place, you can snorkel about anywhere and pull off on the side of the road in Hawaii. But we want to know those special snorkel spots. We want to know the ones that the locals talk about. And we had heard about this really amazing, unheard of. No, if we heard about it, it's not unheard of. Previously unknown, only known to the locals, this amazing snorkel spot. And it was supposed to be like a beautiful hot tub carved out of lava, sitting high up on a shelf, right next to the crashing waves I mentioned, but safe, protected by the rocks and the reef, we were told. So we wouldn't get all washing machined, ground up, and spit out to sea. Not something I wanted to see happen on my honeymoon, right? So we really wanted to go to this snorkel spot in this calm lava pool right next to the violent ocean. But the thing about Hawaiians is they're not very precise with their directions. And again, it's probably because there's no signs, there's no park rangers, like I mentioned. It's a wild place. And there aren't a lot of unique landmarks to go by. I mean, it all is just beautiful ocean and cliffs. So the first person to tell us about the special snorkeling spot told us the road it was on, and then he explained that it was 0.2 of a mile before the end of the road. And we said, great. We got in our car, we headed down the road, and about halfway there, I said to Heather, hey, 0.2 of a mile before the end of the road, how are we supposed to know, having never been there before, when 0.2 of the mile before the end of the road is? And trust me, you don't want to get lost in Hawaii. You don't want to get lost going down some of these dirt roads. There aren't many tow trucks. And there's, again, the problem of telling people where you are. If I got stuck, what am I going to say? 0.2 of a mile before the end of the road? I'm already confused, right? So I was starting to feel really nervous about this secret snorkeling spot and the very vague directions that I had gotten. I was losing my confidence, and it was making me feel really tense, right? That I didn't know exactly where I was going. You following me? Have you ever felt that way in cooking? If you're not sure of where you're going, you feel really tense, insecure, lack of confidence, and so you guess. And that's what we did. We guessed. We went to the end of the road. We backed up 0.2 of a mile. That makes sense. We parked the car and we started walking over some rocks with our snorkeling gear over our shoulders. We're looking for this amazing hidden beach. And then suddenly we realized, because we got bad directions, because we were unsure, because we guessed, we were walking through people's backyards. It was a house right there. People sitting in their kitchen, watching us walk across their private yard. So we had to run through a churchyard. I didn't think we were supposed to be running through a churchyard either. We got over a fence. We quickly got back to the car to try and figure this out. So I finally noticed someone walking along this dirt road, and I stopped them. I rolled down the window. I tried to be, hey, bro, how's it? You know, trying to be like one of the locals. I'm Haoli, nonetheless. You can't escape that. So I asked him about this snorkeling spot, and he was like, oh, yeah, brah. That spot is another 5 minutes down the road. So I started pulling away again, thinking, 5 minutes? At what speed? Right? How fast do I go for 5 minutes to get? Oh my goodness, the vague directions are so frustrating. I wanted to get to this snorkeling spot. I wanted to reach my destination easily, but I was not getting decent instructions. Are you getting my analogy? I don't know how we figured it out eventually, but we made it there. And it was a magnificent spot. It was worth it. Once we figured out, water, crystal clear. We were rewarded with all kinds of fish. We swam with sea turtles. It was just so amazing to try and figure this all out. And we really enjoyed the day. As we were driving away, now having been there, I start watching in my rearview mirror for the potential road markers that I'll remember next time when I come back here. In my rearview mirror, I noticed a particularly large palm tree. Take notice. I noticed a fence with a really large black lava rock. So when we decided to come back another day, I now have a road map in my head. I now have things that I can visually see to see how far along I am, and I don't have to depend on vague instructions anymore. And this whole experience of vague instructions, of things you can't possibly know, but everybody else seems to know anyway, everybody else seems to take them as fact, it stayed in my mind for a long time. The bad Hawaiian directions. Yeah, brah, it's right there. They know, but they don't know that I don't know. And it seemed every Hawaiian knew that that snorkeling spot was just 0.2 of a mile before the end of the road, or another 5 minutes of driving, but didn't recognize that if you hadn't been there before, then you can't recognize where 0.2 of a mile before the end of the road is. And this is years and years before I ever started teaching cooking. Before I ever started thinking about opening a cooking school, but when I did, when I opened my cooking school, I used to tell the snorkeling spot story all the time to the new students because I thought it had a direct correlation to cooking and recipes. Because here it is, recipes have so many vague directions. If you haven't made that dish before, if you haven't been there before, if you don't know what to look for, it's really hard. So when a recipe tells you, heat the pan for 3 to 5 minutes, it's like the guy telling me to drive for 5 minutes without telling me what to look for, without having to recognize my destination. Driving blindly, cooking blindly. And knowing what to look for Recognizing the road markers is so much better than having vague directions, because the big lie that recipes are always telling you is to cook by time and oven temperature. Go back to the beginning. How long to cook something at an uncontrollable oven temperature is the worst way to cook. How do they know? How do they know how long I should cook it? My chicken breast might be twice as thick as theirs. My oven might be half the temperature. It would take twice as long. I have never found an oven that isn't lying about their temperature at some point. How do they know what my pan is made of? Different metals heat differently. How do they know what altitude I live at, which affects cooking times? With all these variables that aren't accounted for when you just go by cooking time and temperature, it's no wonder that most home cooks experience this great inconsistency in their cooking, because they have trouble finding their destination. Just like I did in Hawaii, because I was given vague directions for a snorkeling spot, and you're being given vague directions for cooking. But now that I've been there a few times, now that I could recognize with my eyes where this snorkeling spot is, I arrive at my destination perfectly every time. I wave to the Hawaiians as we go, bro, how's it? You know, I wave each time, and that's how we recognize it. And this is the same with cooking. In culinary school, we don't teach time and temperature. You will never hear a culinary college professor, I hope, you'd never heard this one, tell the students to cook at 350 degrees for 25 minutes. And this is actually one of my favorite questions to answer, because when students come to me and they say, Chef, how long should I cook it? The answer is always the same. Say it with me. Until it's done. That's the reply. If you want to know how long, until it's done. And then they scratch their heads a little bit. They look at the ceiling. They wonder if I'm insane. And they say, well, how do I tell when it's done? Now I got you. That is a much better question. Not how long do I cook it, but how do I tell when it's time to stop cooking? And here comes the aha moment. If you take nothing else from what I'm sharing with you today, take this to heart, memorize it, internalize it, make it your own, because my students are trained to recognize the 4 effects of heat on food. This is the roadmap to all of cooking. Instead of vague directions, the 4 effects of heat on food are like my big palm tree. They're like that large black lava rock and the fence that I can now recognize on my way back to my secret snorkeling spot. The 4 effects of heat on food is the way the professionals cook, because it's quantifiable. It's measurable. It's not vague like 0.2 of a mile before the end of the road, or cook at 350 for 20 minutes. That stuff makes cooking suck. That stuff makes cooking hard and confusing, and it's my enemy, that stuff. But I'm going to share with you all the keys to cooking, the roadmap that every food item has to go through, and how you can recognize them for yourself, because there are 4 effects of heat on food, and if you can recognize them, you have got all the road markers you need to cooking. So let me go through them quickly. The first road marker happens at 150 degrees Fahrenheit or 65 degrees Celsius. This is called gelatinization of starches. Starches absorb liquid and swell, different pantomime. This is for sauce making. When the starch in a flour in your roux absorbs liquid, swells, thickens the sauce. This is pasta. This is rice. This is anything starchy, some vegetables, root vegetables. This is how you know when to cook them, is gelatinization of starches. This is when you know your rice is done. The next important temperature is 165 degrees Fahrenheit or 74 degrees Celsius. It's called coagulation of proteins, maybe one of the most important, because at this temperature, proteins stiffen and shrink. You know, raw hamburger is this big on the grill, cooked hamburger is this big. Put a chicken breast in a saute pan, you can see the outline of where the chicken breast used to be before it stiffened and shrank under coagulation of proteins. This is when you know when things are done. This is the safe final cook temperature for most things. The next landmark we notice on our desire to get to the snorkeling nirvana on our journey in the 4 effects of heat on food happens at 212 degrees or 100 degrees Celsius. This is the one most people know. This is the one they teach in 8th grade science class. These are the temperatures at which water boils, turns to steam, evaporates into the atmosphere. It's evaporation of moisture. But this is an important temperature because this is how you dry stuff out. If it's already cooked at 165 degrees, final finished cooking temperature, but you continue cooking up to 212, you're letting the moisture evaporate. You're drying stuff out. And this is what most home cooks do because it is way more embarrassing to serve something undercooked than it is overcooked. So they just keep cooking and cooking. Last one, at 320 degrees Fahrenheit or 160 degrees Celsius, sugars turn brown. They get brittle. This is called caramelization of sugars, and it's that beautiful brown plate appearance on your chicken breast. It's the gorgeous grill marks on your steak or your vegetables. It gives appearance to your dishes and sweetness when you can caramelize the sugars in the item. So, I mean, I've really brushed over this. This is a semester in culinary school. We go into every one of them. But when you cook with the 4 effects of heat on food, it's like having a road marker or a sign right in front of you because you know when to turn. You know when to pull back on the heat. You know when to speed up. You know when to capture the moisture with a lid. You know when to reduce without a lid. Speed up, slow down. How you're controlling your journey. But most importantly, the 4 effects of heat on food tell you when you've arrived at your location, your destination. That's the most important part. And the best home cooks I know cook by the way the food reacts to the heat. Not by time or temperature, the way the food reacts to the heat. The changes in the food because of the application of the heat. They don't use a clock. And they don't listen to what their oven dial says. These are confusing and distracting. They use a thermometer, and they tell exactly when they've arrived at that secret snorkeling spot of cooking. They go for internal temperatures. And I mean, this is such a huge concept for someone searching for freedom in their cooking. And I know you've heard the phrase cook with your eyes, but nobody's ever really explained what the heck that means. Oh, it's eat with your eyes. Is that what it... Nonetheless, what are your eyes looking for? You know, they cook with your eyes. What are you looking for? Grandma says, oh, I cook with my eyes by feel. What are you looking for? What are you feeling for, Grandma? You never clued me in. Your eyes are looking for sauces to thicken. Your eyes are looking for rice to absorb water. It's gelatinization of starches. You can see that happening. Your eyes are watching a protein product stiffen and shrink. It's coagulation of proteins. Then you see steam coming out and the steam stops. You're letting the moisture escape. It's evaporation of moisture. When you start to smell sweetness, when you see the item browning, when you peek underneath, you see the caramelization of sugars. Those are the road markers of cooking. And they'll always steer you in the right direction. Because when you cook with a focus on the result of applying the heat to food, you become a truly empowered cook that never has to stop and ask for directions. Then we can all stop worrying about all the questions of doubt that swirl around in your mind and cook with confidence. Don't turn the heat up, turn the heat down, turn the heat up, turn the heat down, lid on, lid off, lid on, don't know. When you have road markers, when you have quantifiable temperatures to depend on, you get confidence and creativity, and you know that combination turns into pride of what you've created. And when you have pride in what you've created, when you have confidence of controlling the cooking process, you are so ready to invent something new tomorrow. Nobody needs a recipe. Written recipes, like roadmaps, can be really confusing. And I guess everybody knows now what this week's What Am I is all about. It's the 4 effects of heat on food. The most important temperatures in cooking, and something every culinary college student gotta know by heart. You don't know how many times I test them on this. And I'll tell you, any home cook that passes my way should be at least aware of them, if not know them by heart. And if you know somebody who's driving in circles, expecting a roadmap or a cookbook to teach them how to get where they're going, then please like, love, share this video with them so that they can get on the right path. And, you know, like I said, summer, the last weekend of summer's behind us. So it's time to change your cooking for the new season. And if you really want to add some new and excitement, interesting things into your fall cooking, my new free online class is called Fall Cooking is Cozy. 3 surprising ways to enrich your fall cooking that you might be missing. It makes it easy. Start cooking with squashes. How about some of these new ingredients, the gourds and thicker sauces and darker gravies? You'll see the 3 things that I change for the fall season in my cooking. You'll see the new flavors that I start cooking with when you go to webcookingclasses.com/cozy to find out when the next class is starting. So until next Tuesday, where we take more steps in trying to crack the Carefree Cooks Code, this is Chef Todd Moore reminding you that there's always a method to your cooking success. Bye, everyone.